There's no reason we can't create these lessons that look just like they do in our classroom, but in a YouTube video format. We got to make sure every single response that we get from any student on Seesaw, we got to find a way to actually reciprocate and throw it back at them. Don't just hit the like button. I'm content with my philosophies as a teacher in general, not my methodology, to be able to tackle whatever is going to come for us.
You come with that growth mindset and that can-do attitude. And through our discussion of just this little bit of 6 feet PE, there wasn't the what we can't do, it's what we're going to do.
Twitter to me is professional development whenever and however you want to get it.
Welcome, physical educators. This is Thinking PE.
Because Phi Ed is more than just fun and games.
I'm Stacy Nelson.
And I'm Jamie Seneca.
And it's our goal to dig deeper beyond the activities that make your class awesome.
So buckle up and join us on this journey.
Welcome to another edition of Thinking PE. Jamie, you know what I'm thinking?
I can't imagine. What have you been thinking?
I'm thinking pretty much what every PE teacher in the nation is thinking. It's August, and we're heading into an unprecedented year, and I'm not going to be able to use a good share of my curriculum that I've used for the last 8 years. So I'm thinking about what in the world am I going to do? Where am I going to find resources? Where am I going to be able to find games that fit the new definitions of what we're going to do? I don't know. What are you thinking?
Just like you, I'm thinking the same thing. Embrace the change because change is here. So
yeah, true.
So it's kind of we need new curriculum. We need new ideas. And where do we get these ideas from? I mean, the first place I run to is Twitter. Twitter. Yeah. The gentleman we're about to talk to, his statement, Twitter is professional development on demand.
Yeah, I like that statement. Yeah. Randy Spring is his name, and he's a local guy for us in Minnesota here. So it's kind of fun to connect with somebody local, but he also has a worldwide reach through his Twitter. He's got a massive Twitter following, and we leaned on him pretty heavily back in March here when we all went distance learning. He's got a ton of resources out there on Twitter, and you and I kind of talked about that. There's some of those games that we didn't come up with. We went through this place called Twitter and kind of shook the spring tree. How's that? Shook the Randy Spring tree and had a lot of stuff come down that we could use. I don't know. Did you end up using some of his stuff as well? Yeah, and it was a great place. He's a lot of different activities that he created and those sort of things, and then able to get some ideas off that as well. So, I mean, a great resource to help us get started on that distance learning experience. And as we approach this new school year, we'll be looking for the same stuff. All right. So to start this interview out, he's just going to quickly introduce himself, and then he's just going to go right into some of the things that he did and his experience with distance learning. Well, but first we have to listen to his funniest moment as a teacher. Oh, so can't leave that out, can we? All right. Let's go ahead and meet Mr. Randy Spring.
My name's Randy Spring. I'm originally from Elgin, Minnesota, southeastern Minnesota. I graduated high school in 2003. I went to Winona State University, which is also in southeastern Minnesota. Got my physical education and health education degrees along with DAPE instruction. And that kind of led me to the South Washington County District 833 school district, which is the northeast side of the Twin Cities. And I've been there, for 11 years now. I've been at my current school of Liberty Ridge Elementary School, which is in Woodbury, Minnesota. I think this would have been my 9th year there. But yeah, I absolutely love where I teach. I love the community I teach at. I love my administration. I love my staff. My team is amazing. I'm extremely grateful and fortunate because I've taught in a lot of different environments and communities, and the support that I get at Liberty Ridge and through South Washington County in regards to being a physical education teacher is through the roof. So super pumped to be where I'm at. In regards to your question as funniest moment teaching, so this has kind of shaped me as a physical educator. So I'm at Liberty Ridge, which I just talked about, and the school is so big. There's anywhere between 1,000 to 1,100 kids,
Oh, wow.
K through 5, every year. And the building is so big. Before I even got there, the district purchased a building across the street to be the kindergarten only building. So essentially we had a site 1, which was 1st through 5th grade. And then we had site 2, which was kindergarten only with preschool. And when I first started teaching at Liberty Ridge, I knew about site 2, the kindergarten building, because other teachers taught there. And I was just a crossover teacher, so I didn't get to really teach at Liberty Ridge all day. But they always kind of talked about it in a negative way. Like, you literally had to teach kindergarten PE all day long. And I get that, but the way they talked about it, it made any average man or woman not even want to step across the street, right? So my 3rd year of teaching, I got hired on full-time at Liberty Ridge, and I rather than dive into these uncomfortable conversations about who's going to be the PE teacher in our team that has to go across the street and be the kindergarten PE teacher, I just said, you know what, guys, I'll do it. I want to do it. I want to dive over there. I know you have to teach in a small box, like a 30-yard by 15-yard room all day with kindergarten, but I want to do it. I want to see what it's like. That started my career, my ascent, in regards to my passion and just complete desire to want to teach elementary PE all day, every day. But to get back to the funniest moments, I had never had those like real literal responses by kindergartners and 1st graders up to this point. But anyway, I'm teaching by myself one day. This is like 2 months in, kindergarten PE all day. And I'm a little tired one of these days, and we're in a little huddle, and I'm noticing that this group of kindergartners is just crazy laser focused on me. Like, I could have been, in front of millions of people rocking it out, and they're just loving everything I'm saying, right? Completely focused. And out of nowhere, this kindergartner, passed some loud gas. And I'm waiting for somebody to laugh or say something, right? Because they're kids. Nobody says anything. They continue to be laser focused on me, and I just lose it. I'm losing it. I can't stop laughing. Snot's almost coming out of my nose because I'm looking around like, seriously, nobody's gonna laugh. But you guys know, like, they're kindergartners. They're so literal. They do things like that often in their class. And looking back, I had a lot of respect for those kids because they had good manners.
Yeah.
Another funny moment at that same building, because I grew a lot there, but I had some funny experiences. I had my first accident. A student had an accident, and they just came up to me. They were really shy and like nervous and like a little embarrassed. And I was like, oh, it's okay. Like, let me get you to the bathroom. And then I had our office coordinator watch my class quickly. And I didn't even think, because I was so immature, I didn't think there might have been a puddle left behind.
Oh, no.
So I just kept teaching. And we were doing a relay. And sure enough, 15 seconds back in, this kid just slips and falls, literally slides like on a water slide, 6 feet across the gym. And I was just like, oh my goodness. You could tell I don't have children at home, and I'm very wet behind the ears for a PE teacher. So both of those experiences, I learned a lot. I had some good laughs, but
that brings new meaning to 6 feet PE. That
there you go.
what we've been trying to talk about lately.
There you go. thankfully that student actually laughed when they were done, and then when they realized what they just slid in, they started to cry. So it went from a really fun moment to a little starring moment.
But you didn't get a phone call from mom or dad saying
No.
what in the world's going on? That's the scary part with that is.
Yeah, because obviously they could have gotten hurt, and that's how we become who we are. We learn from those experiences and make sure they don't happen again. And the best teachers are the ones that actually learn from things. And
Yep.
So yeah, I haven't had one of those moments in 8 years. So
Well, good for you.
Knock on wood.
Yeah.
It seems like most of the stories people will tell about their funniest moments, they begin with, when I was teaching kindergarten.
Isn't that the truth?
It just seems to happen that way.
Yeah.
So the fact that you have two of them makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I loved every single day teaching at that building.
Oh, yeah.
And I could go on and on about how those kids validated me. They didn't even know it. Because I threw things at those kids that nobody ever really would have. When people looked at kindergarten at my building, it was more so like, oh, you got to go over to site 2. Good luck. Or you played the same game, sharks and whales or whatever it is. And the reason I wanted to go over there was I literally wanted to teach kindergarten the same way I taught first, second, third, fourth, and fifth grade. Obviously in a modified versions and levels, but to me, I feel like unless I tried it, I didn't know what kindergartners could learn or attempt to learn unless I put it in front of them, right? And, I failed a lot those first, months at that building, but I succeeded a lot too, and it helped me find myself, and it, put me on an uphill trajectory ever since then, and very grateful for that experience.
Well, it's fascinating. So can you share something you got in trouble for as a kid?
Oh gosh. Well, Elgin, Minnesota is a very small town, so we got in a lot of mischief.
Yeah, you don't get away with anything in small towns.
Oh gosh. So I'll keep it as, it's not really G-rated, but I don't want to tell you too much and make you think any less of me. But this story kind of just connects to, elementary or young students that we've all kind of had experience teaching and how impressionable kids are, right? So I think I was in second grade, and I always kind of gravitated towards the older kids at recess, right? And playing games out, on the playground or whatever. And I remember starting to hear this word that I knew probably wasn't appropriate, right? Because the kids would always laugh, and then eventually I figured out like it was inappropriate, and there was just something wrong about it. It was rebellious, and I have no idea why I did it, but I was walking home from school on a fresh snow day, and for some reason I wrote that word in the snow, and I just pointed an arrow in the snow down at the word, right? And we'll just say it, for lack of better terms, it rhymed with tadpole. And I didn't even think the fact that the arrow was also pointing at the house. So I wrote that word, I pointed an arrow down at it, and then I walked away. And all of a sudden this dad is running me down the sidewalk, and I'm losing it. I'm like, oh my gosh, should I run? It was in my neighborhood. I was naive. I assumed everybody was fine. And he basically walked me home so he could tell my mom and my dad what I just wrote in the snow. And, I was terrified, especially with my dad. Not that he was going to hurt me or anything, but I knew he might raise his voice. But he left, and both my mom and dad looked at me like, what in the world were you thinking? And I just thought to myself, okay, I could lie about this, or I could just be honest. And I was honest, and they both kind of laughed. And they asked me, do you know that that's a bad, inappropriate curse word? And I was like, well, I do now. And then, I learned from that. I moved forward in life, and I made sure not to write any inappropriateness in the fresh Minnesota snow.
And that was your junior year of high school?
Yeah, right. So that'll be a different podcast when you talk about those years.
So let's revisit distance learning. We're into the summer here, and we still like to talk about the distance learning because that is something that we learned a lot through that whole process. And we kind of talked a little bit how you take your first 2 weeks of distance learning and your last 2 weeks of distance learning, and there's a significant amount of growth, as individual teachers and as schools and just as a profession as a whole. So why don't you share with us a little bit on what you did with your students for distance learning? What did you find successful?
Yeah, sure. You guys can cut me off anytime, if I go off on a tangent here, but I'll just kind of go from start to finish. When all this went down, obviously, like the whole rest of the world, we're shocked, worried, a little bit stressed as an educator, like you don't know what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, what it's going to look like, and who's going to receive it, right? But I was very grateful and lucky these past 2 years to work on an awesome team. In my school district, where our kids are really lucky, they get physical education 4 days a week, 30 minutes a day. And because that, they get so much exposure to PE, we have more teachers, right, that are needed in all the buildings in our district. Well, in my team, we have a couple teachers that are there full time, and then a couple crossovers. Anyway, 3 years ago, I had my very first student teacher, and she was actually a teacher's assistant for me as a high schooler in my second year of teaching. Her name is Taylor LeMay, and she was a graduate from our district too. She was a teacher's assistant then. Her and I kind of hit it off. She was really open to learning how to teach and be a good teacher then and early, even though I didn't have all the answers then. But she could tell I really cared about her passion for wanting to be an educator someday. Anyway, fast forward to 3 years ago, she asked me to student teach with me, and because she knew all the things that I wanted to do in regards to technology, small-sided games, making kids feel valued and noticed and cared for and loved, on top of, physically active and educated. Now she's on my team. She was lucky to get hired 2 years ago. She was lucky to get rehired last year. And the growth that she has built into her teaching over the past 2 years is unbelievable. And I'd like to say that I supported a lot of that, but, she brought to the table herself. Mm-hmm. But anyway, fast forward to when we found the news we were going to distance teach. At that moment, you guys know, we didn't know how long this was going to be. If it was going to be 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, the rest of the school year, we had no idea. But her and I, because we were the main teachers at Site 1, her and I sat down and I said, hey, what do you think about we attack our curriculum the way we did to start the school year, right? We mapped everything out in in August, and we teach it, right? Well, we sat down, we looked at, okay, this is what we have left on our schedule from March until the end of May. So we said, hey, if we can, let's try to do all this. Let's stay true to our teaching. Let's stay true to our planning. And let's teach all of these different units and lessons like we had planned. Well, the second part was we went through the whole schedule and we asked ourselves, can we do all this? Are our kids going to be able to do bat and ball lessons? Are they going to be able to do foot skills, stuff like that? And there were a couple, I think there was 2 units that we looked at it and we're like, you know what, this is going to be difficult for us to teach from a distance, and it's going to be difficult for our kids to learn and participate in from a distance. So we cut those out. We kept all the other ones that we, were excited to continue to teach because we felt we could do it. It might be a challenge, but we kept doing it. And what we did was, you guys are probably familiar with looping a curriculum now, taking, let's say, hand striking activities or units and revisiting it twice or third time throughout the year. So there was a couple of units that we weren't able to plug in for a second or third loop. So what we did was, in those 2 weeks, I believe, that we deleted something we didn't think we could teach very well, we added gymnastics and tumbling, which we were only going to teach one time, as a second loop, right? And that was nice because we already had some good stuff created visually, and that was easy to plug in. And then there was another unit, I think long implements, we were able to plug back in for a second loop. So that's how we attacked it first and second. Then the third part was the how, right? Okay, if we're going to teach all this, what kind of equipment can we have our kids make at home? And we made a complete list for every single lesson and unit of equipment that we felt like we could create for them on videos and pictures. And then we gave them those options when we added them to our lessons. So that's how we started this whole spiel, right? And I feel like that was the defining moment of our success with our entire 8-week distance PE learning, right? Because her and I were on the same page, and we didn't look back. And then the next part, and I know we were extremely grateful and blessed in our district to have 100% of our kids were access internet and devices at home. And we knew that early, and we told ourselves, hey, there's no reason we can't create these lessons that look just like they do in our classroom, but in a YouTube video format. And we just told ourselves, hey, let's do it just like let's do each of our lessons, how we do it during the school year, which is, a brain and body boost. When our kids come in, we call it, they're moving right away. They're learning, they're exposed to the new skill. And then, they're doing their main learning target, and then they're doing a calming close, right? And we were able to do that. And to kind of structure or talk about how our district told us what to put out, they told us only 2 lessons per week we were supposed to post. So on Monday, it was kindergarten, first and second grade will get our first PE lesson. And then that Tuesday, our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders would get their first lesson. And then our second lesson would be Wednesday and then Thursday. So in a nutshell, that's how we structured things, and that's how we attack things. You guys have any questions on that? I can keep going. Go ahead.
Yeah. What platform did you have? Like a Seesaw, a Google Classroom, a Schoology?
Yep. So that was the second thing. Our district, the past 2 or 3 years, had been completely 100% committed to Seesaw. Okay. And we used it a little bit before distance learning. But what we noticed was it was difficult to showcase a lot of the things you were doing with your students in class, but it was very difficult to share it with parents at home, because we didn't want to cross that line of privacy, because all of our classes are team taught. So you got a bunch of students in one class engaging with other students, and it was hard for us because we are always mixed in our classes together, and it was difficult to be able to show that content at home in Seesaw without, pushing those boundaries. So we had a little exposure to it, but, for anybody that doesn't know what Seesaw is, it's basically like a social media platform with different avenues where kids can do activities, assignments. You can grade them, you can share them with parents, you can share them with the students, you can, communicate back and forth. We were really lucky in our district to have that. Because it just made our sharing of our content so seamless, and it made us, more excited to make high quality content in PE to share it, because it was going to be grasped in a open way.
Yeah. So funny, glad you mentioned engagement there, because we were able to just talk to a lot of teachers that with the engagement are able to be pretty creative with their content and supply, meaningful activities, but what the students really craved and what we really struggled as a Phi Ed community was building those relationships. I just want to talk a little bit about if you were able to, have some interaction, student to teacher or even student to student interaction, if you were able to do that in a distance learning setting.
Yeah. So, to dive a little deeper in that question, that's what makes our job the best, right? We get to see more students out of the whole school than anybody else. And that's what makes what we do not so fun, but addicting, right? Like you're able to have a hopefully positive impact on so many more kids, because your doors are open to so many more students, K through 5 or whatever you're teaching. And we knew going into this that was going to be tough, and it was going to be tough for the kids. So that's why Taylor and I, we had that conversation. How are we going to make sure that they see our face, they hear our words, they hear our voice, and they still feel our presence without actually being face to face? And, the first thing we did when we knew we were going to do this YouTube platform was we both made a video that was sent directly to the parents and the kids in a very positive, upbeat, typical, you're in our classroom way, right? and just to calm their nerves and let them know, like, hey, this is going to be okay. Like, we're going to work hard for you. We're going to still hopefully make you feel like you're in class with us, even though you're not. But like you said, Jamie, it wasn't the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the best way that we went into it, honestly, and I talked to Taylor, I'm like, hey, if we get 50% of our kids to show that they're responding on Seesaw, I'm going to be happy. And I told her too, I'm just like, I don't know, part of me feels like it's going to be really difficult for parents to get their students to do our stuff alongside all the other stuff, right? And so we set our standard, not our standard, but like our expectations lower in regards to how are we going to know how involved these kids are with all of our lessons. And sure enough, that's what happened. And I don't know if you guys went through the same thing. We're able to see in Seesaw who actually opens up our activities and how long they participate with it. And I would say almost every lesson, 50%, around 40% of the kids actually showed or responded to all our activities, which was kind of a bummer. But I got a kindergartner at home along with a 4-year-old and a 9-month-old. And I mean, I desperately wanted my son to do all of PE every single week to show Mr. Butters, his teacher, like, we acknowledge all of your efforts, because he killed it. He was such a great teacher for Noah, distance learning. But we didn't get to all of it. And that just told me, it was just like, okay, if I can't get all of the PE in, there's going to be a lot of other people that aren't even teachers or PE teachers that aren't going to get it either. So thankfully, we set that bar low for expectations, and it kind of helped with our emotional distancing, like just keeping an even flow no matter how much we see our kids doing. We were still confident that, hey, they're doing what they can when they can, and they totally appreciate what we're doing for them. But to answer your question, Jamie, I told Taylor, I said, hey, we got to make sure every single response that we get from any student on Seesaw, we got to find a way to actually reciprocate and throw it back at them. Don't just hit the like button a bunch of times. I know that's easy to do, but as often as we possibly could, we were typing responses back like, hey, I absolutely love how you got your brother involved with the brain and body boost this week. Your mom and dad were doing such a great job with the overhand throwing activity. Just small little words. And it was cool because you could tell, like, they were like, oh, thank you so much. Like, they were kind of surprised to hear like our words, and they could tell they were our words based on how we typed them. And sometimes we would use, because there's cool ways you can record your voice and throw it in Seesaw too. But yeah, like that was the best way for us to truly connect with the kids relationally. But yeah, it wasn't the same.
That's so encouraging. That's so encouraging to hear, just because, I mean, we found that the teachers we talked to and the students, that just that little comment is something they crave because they're not getting that. And it was so difficult because we're so immediate feedback is something we're so used to in class. And I was also glad to hear just that growth mindset that you have and how you sent out that video, the calming video, a positive, upbeat video to the parents, even though we were scrambling on the inside. But it is that, yes, we can do this. And I think that's to me, that sets the tone for what the experience is going to be.
Yeah.
So can you share maybe something that didn't work or something that you would have done different?
Yeah. So getting back to, our conversation with Taylor, because, everything we did together, and, both voices were heard. And when we talked about how, hey, we hope 50% of our kids are showing that they're responding, even though that's really low, I think it set the bar for us in a very positive way. But after that, I said, hey, what do you think about, it might be annoying for parents, but what if after 1 or 2 weeks of this distance learning, we send out a really short survey, a Google form? And because I was nervous about, our goal was to make our lessons 20 to 30 minutes, again, because, we wanted to try and simulate in-class PE as much as possible. Some of those lessons got to be 30, 35 minutes, and I was nervous about that because when a parent or anything who's doing online learning or distance learning looks at a video and is like, what, 30 minutes? Are you serious? I'm not even going to open that, right? But anyway, we sent out a Google survey or form 2 weeks in, and the feedback was split right down the middle. 50% of the parents are like, hey, keep sending out 30 to 35 minutes. We absolutely love at-home PE with Liberty. Keep doing it. And then the other 50% were like, oh, we didn't get to everything. Please do less. Make them 10 to 15 minutes. So her and I just took that feedback, and we're just like, hey, what if we meet in the middle and we try to aim for 20 to 25 minutes? 25 minutes if we have to. And honestly, that was the best thing we could have done, because from then on out, we were just more confident and at ease with what we were creating, with the hope that, the parents were helping their kids do it and the kids were actually doing it. Because when we started, our lessons were really long. I'll be honest with you, they were way too long. One of them was almost 38 minutes. And it was really freaking good, in my opinion, right? In our opinion. But again, it's just like, if a parent that's already struggling to get everything in at home sees 38 minutes for PE, like, the odds of them not opening it or saying, hey, Charlie or Jenny, let's go outside and ride our bike instead, that's probably going to happen. So we reflected, we made a mistake. We shifted to 20, 25 minutes, and the kids and families seem to be very appreciative of that.
Yeah. We have interviewed a few other people, and they use the term that either their principal told them or they learned. They call it less is more with distance learning. Yeah, you can go 38, but you know what? If you cut that down to 22, you might get more out of them, and then they'll be excited the next.
Totally. Totally. And I know, on your former podcast, I think you guys talked about how, a lot of teachers might have been discouraged or were discouraged at, the lack of how many kids were actually showing that they were doing the stuff that they were creating, right? And, I can tell a story that might uplift a lot of you guys or any of the people that are going to listen to this. A week and a half before we completely finished school, we had a drive-by wellness, a well-wish drive-by, where we were going to wish all of our students well that could come and drive through our parking lot. And I can't tell you how overwhelmed and excited I was when I left that parade, simply because there were so many moms and dads that yelled out the window, "We love at-home PE. Thank you so much." And so many of those parents weren't even showing that they were doing stuff on our Seesaw platform, right? And sometimes a lot of kids would share videos and pictures of them doing it, but a lot of kids wouldn't, right? And so many families were telling us how much they were appreciating what we were doing, and we didn't even know, or we assumed that they weren't even doing it.
Right.
So just because you weren't seeing people do, the things that you were doing during this distance PE learning doesn't mean that they didn't do it and didn't appreciate it.
Yeah. Jamie, I've been called a little loopy before.
If that's the worst you've been called, you're doing good, because I've been called a whole lot worse.
Yeah. I'm thinking maybe that's why I kind of really relate to that looping idea. It's been something even way back when you were teaching with me at St. Francis that I kind of wanted to get off the idea of units, do a unit and then we're done. And that's why I kind of embraced the idea of standards, because standards, you can hit a standard in 4 different units and kind of look at that. And it's kind of like they sound like they were doing. I just love that approach of, hey, we can't do this, but let's bring in something we did before and let's touch on it again, because the students at home don't have equipment for maybe volleyball, but they can do gymnastics, and let's loop that this year and that type of thing. I just love that. It feels like just a very professional approach. Going, okay, we got blocked by something. There was a roadblock. We can't do this. So then what can we do? It's that attitude that you talk about all the time, the growth mindset. And he just exemplifies that. I love that whole approach.
Well, yeah, and I admire the ability. We talk about, putting content into the distance learning model.
Yes.
And they approach that head on. And not only head on, but where do we have gaps where we've only done gymnastics once so far this year? Let's use that. Let's loop around to that and bring it back for during distance learning.
Yeah. Yeah, you can definitely tell they weren't trying to get by with the minimum with
Mhm.
this with this group here. They were going. I mean, their first attitude was like, "How can we do it all?
Yeah.
How can we conquer everything? We're not going to be slowed down by this." And then, okay, the reality is we are going to be slowed down by this. But what do we need to do, or what can we still?
And that's one of the things that he reflected on, and it is that reflecting pieces that
Yes.
makes us great educators. But he reflected on, some of the things that he could have done better, and the lessons just started out too long. And you made a great comment there with less is more.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that we've been hearing that from a lot of different, I believe, wise people through this whole distance learning process. Is just relax on it, focus on small parts, and do it really well.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to get way farther than you will than trying to slam, like he said, a 38-minute lesson is just too long. Parents might do it once, but then you won't fool them twice. It's just too much, and then you lose everything from them.
Well, and that's just rather than send out a list of 50 different activities for the kids to do, send out that purposeful, that short, purposeful, meaningful, deliberate instruction.
Yeah.
With a learning target of something that you want the kids to achieve.
Yeah, and what I don't want to confuse the audience at all with the idea that you can give students a list of other things to do to keep them busy 60 minutes a day. We still want to do that, but that's a different goal than PE instruction, in my opinion.
And I agree.
Keeping a student active, we want to promote that. The NFL is promoting that. We're all in on that, and that's where, the list of activities and ideas to keep kids busy, fantastic. But in my opinion, that's a different role than you get 30 minutes or sometimes 40 minutes, depending on what school you're at. To me, there needs to be, like you said, that purposeful, meaningful, deliberate instruction as part of it, and that needs to be narrow, not super broad. I think.
And Randy was really creative with inserting that content into his curriculum, and that's a masterful skill. But now we'll have an opportunity to see that creativity in action when we start talking about hashtag 6 feet PE. So let's take a listen to this next section.
We're sitting right in the middle of June of 2020, and we're in no man's land.
Mm-hmm.
Across the country, even across the world, for talking to different PE teachers in different countries, nobody knows for sure what's going to happen in the fall. Everybody's knowing we're going to do teaching of some sort, but nobody knows how. And so we've been trying to, we've coined, but we've been calling this 6 feet PE, the idea of using social distancing, some type of modified form of teaching where either we'll have half a class, so we'll have more space, but we're going to have kids probably in some space, whether it's a classroom or a gymnasium. Do you want to talk a little bit about your thoughts on that and what or maybe what you're just suspecting and how you're kind of mentally preparing for that?
Yeah, so I'm going to be 100% honest. I am doing very little tangibly to prepare for it. And the reason is I know where, and you guys know this too, where our state stands and where our district stands in regards to what it could look like, and how we're going to find out what, when it will look like that, right? So anybody listening that might not know, in Minnesota, our district, along with the governor, said at the end of July, they're going to come out with, there's 3 possible scenarios that we could be teaching in the fall, right? 100% in school with social distancing and other measures being taken. Phase 2 or option 2, which is half and half, right? Half of K through 5 are going to be at school certain days, and the other half will be at home, and then vice versa. And then the third option, which is 100% distance learning at home. And me knowing those 3 things, it would be a lot of time and effort to put into planning for all 3 of those phases, right? And I'm not going to say I'm not doing it because, I'm spent and I'm done, like I'm exhausted from distance learning. It's just like, you guys know, like I invest time and energy into things that are likely going to come to fruition, right? And if I don't know completely what's going to happen, I'm content with my philosophies as a teacher in general, not my methodology, to be able to tackle whatever's going to come for us come fall, right? I'm super hopeful that we're going to be seeing the kids in person. If not, the reason I love being an educator and a physical educator in general is the fact that I get to be flexible. I get to be creative. I get to adjust on the fly. I get to think of things that nobody else might think about, just to engage my students and keep them safe as much as possible. And to me, just those thoughts or ideas going into the fall makes me really excited, right? It's like, okay, what are we going to do if this happens? Okay, let's get in, it's kind of like the war room, right? Like, let's get in the room, let's get on the board, let's start writing things down, the what's, the why's, the how's, and how are we going to get this to our kids? And how are they going to feel our presence, physically or emotionally or socially, mentally too? How are they going to, grasp or want what we're going to give that to them without making them feel overwhelmed? I'm excited about that world, really excited about it. I know a lot of people are talking about, doing the 6 feet distance teaching within the classroom. We do a lot of activities where we have our students find hotspots. It's like a call and response. So like I say, find a hot spot. So a hotspot means I can find a spot in the gymnasium or in the classroom where I find my feet still and I reach my hands completely around my body. And if I touch anything or anybody, I could burn them. And I don't want to burn anybody. So I got to keep my hotspot within my, distance, right? So I'm excited at the thought of, okay, I get to take that principle and that structure and find a way to get my students to learn as much as possible in regards to our curriculum and our standards and all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know it doesn't answer a lot, Stacy, but
no, that's
Actually,
fine.
I say actually it does, because you say you're not putting any thought into it, but it's just your approach, your enthusiasm. You said your strengths, your flexibility, your creativity, and your ability to adjust on the fly. And I think you take that same approach that you did with distance learning, and it's just you're just kind of waiting for that. What's it going to look like? And I've got all these tools in my toolbox, and I'm ready to approach it to best meet my students' needs. And use things that you already have, your hotspots.
Yep.
Yeah, and if we are, something I can kind of like really go into detail about, if we do have, or hopefully we do teach in person with our kids, I've already thought about putting these boxes and these spots and just basically matrixing out my gym floor in a way where I can make sure if there's 1 class, 2 classes, or 3 classes in my gym, that they're going to be in a safe spot all the time. And then it's like, okay, if I don't have a lot of opportunities to use equipment, or I don't want to waste too much time having to clean it, how can we do things without actually using that equipment? And I've already thrown out the idea to my teammate Taylor LeMay, like, hey, maybe to start the year, we make sure every kid is taught how to make their own beanbag. Maybe every kid is going to be taught how to make their own paper ball, or a ball that we can get for super cheap. And they just have their own, beanbag or ball of some sort that they bring to PE every single day, and then they take it back to their locker or their desk. Because to me, there's a lot that you could do with those 2 pieces of equipment within your curriculum, where kids aren't sharing that equipment or losing that equipment to make them break that 6 feet bubble. So, that's just a little scratching the surface of some things I'm thinking about going into the fall if we do teach together. But again, if not, I'm super creative, not super creative, but I'm super excited to dive in, and get as creative as we possibly can as a team to still teach high quality physical education, whether it's in person or from a distance. So,
and personally,
we need you on those 6 feet PE podcasts we're doing. Even with those couple ideas, if every teacher brings 1 or 2 like that, that's what ideas really get motorized.
I am game, and I'm going to throw a shout out to my district. I have been unbelievably impressed and amazed at not only the communication they had with their staff from start to finish, but towards the end, they were doing all these focus groups with all the specialists, math teachers, PE teachers, art teachers, music teachers, where they brought us all to the table and said, hey, what are your concerns, or what do you need if we do teach in person? If we don't teach in person, what do you need to teach from a distance to be better? And I just thought that was really awesome. It just made us all feel valued. My wife teaches 7th grade math. They did the same thing for her. And just saying, hey, we're giving you a voice and we want to take your feedback. Because like you guys, we don't know exactly what's going to happen, but we're going to be prepared to make the right decisions for you and our students when that day comes. So
I got to tell you, from a professional standpoint, it is absolutely inspiring, just your approach. And I truly mean that, just because it's going to lead into our next segment here, in how whatever that task is, you come with that growth mindset and that can-do attitude. And through our discussion of just this little bit of 6 feet PE, there wasn't the what we can't do, it's what we're going to do. Stacy, this whole idea of hashtag 6 feet PE, teaching physical education while respecting social distancing, it's one of those things that come out. And when you hear it, there's two ways to think about it. You can think of it as a barrier, or think of it as an opportunity for growth, a challenge. And Randy has obviously taken that second part of the road, where he sees it as an opportunity, as a challenge and he's confident that he's able to overcome that, because he's flexible, he's creative, and he's able to adjust on the fly.
Well, and he just proved he could take changes by what he had done in the last several months with distance learning. He was flexible. He was able to fix it on the fly and adjust and think about it and make improvements. And so he's kind of proved to himself again that he and his team can really take on the challenge, and they took this one on, they'll take the next one on.
Yeah, and it's that reflection piece. Nobody's perfect. We're all going to make mistakes. You try things, and it's what you do when you make that mistake, or you see something that's not working. You keep kicking that dead horse, or do you, like he sent out a survey to find out, hey, what can I do better? And when he got that feedback, then started to make those changes.
Yeah, no, you can tell he's a thinker, and as much as he said he's not thinking about it, wasn't it kind of fun? We both kind of got that idea that, yeah, you said you're not thinking about it, but by the end, you had more to say about it than almost anybody. You've thought about it.
We always joke around. We're writing this book on hashtag 6 feet PE, and we have a pretty sweet title, but we don't have any pictures. We don't even have a table of contents. And he actually just wrote our first chapter.
Yeah. So he's thought about it, because it's just what he does. He's a reflector. I mean, that's why he fits perfectly on this podcast called Thinking PE, because I believe he does that a lot. Maybe be interesting to talk to his wife to see if it's the detriment of maybe he thinks about it way too much. But he is, because of that, he is confident in his ability, and he can adjust on the fly. He's not struggling in those areas. So as a matter of fact, he kind of reminded me of an analogy as we were talking about this. It kind of reminds me, I feel like he's just got a ton of tools in his toolbox. Mm-hmm. Reminds me of a carpenter, that a good carpenter gets called and says, hey, can you build a deck? He's not worried about it. He's got the tools. He'll go and build a deck. If he's asked to build a dollhouse for his daughter, he can do that too, because he's got the tools, he's got the know-how, and he just adjusts what he does on the fly. Again, I don't know if that's a good analogy or not, but that's kind of what it reminded me of, why he could just have this quiet confidence about him, that, well, whatever they tell me to build in the fall, I'll build it,
Yeah, and I like that, just where he was wanting to take stuff that he already does and is eager and excited to adjust it. When he talked about his hotspots, take something that he already does and make it fit, make it work to respect whatever restrictions we might have based on COVID.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. He's got these tools, like the hotspots, like other things he's done in his class. He'll just pull them out, adapt them a little bit, and make them work.
So this next segment here, we are going to really pick his brain into the Thinking PE philosophy. We're going to talk about the current state of physical education. Where are we going? Where's our profession going? We're going to talk about SEL, and we're going to talk about this professional development on demand that we call Twitter. So it's pretty exciting. So stick with us and let's listen to this next section. If you want to talk a little bit about what you see as the current state of PE, because through distance learning, we had an opportunity to teach. Our curriculum was on full display. Our parents, we got to teach in a glass house, and that can be really, really good. And in some ways that can be really, really bad. And maybe there's some unforeseen ramifications for being on full display, but where do you see Phi-Ed going? And, just what do you see as the current state of Phi-Ed?
Well, so the world of PE that I get to see is a lot through Twitter. I know you guys are on Twitter. I know a lot of people do Facebook too, and I know there's a lot of high quality people out there that teach PE. But on Facebook, I've just heard a lot of negative comments and negative breakdowns of people breaking down other people for what they're sharing or what they're doing in their classrooms. I don't do Facebook anyway, but I focus on Twitter. So if I'm not thinking of other worlds, I apologize. But Twitter to me is professional development whenever and however you want to get it, because there's so many high quality educators out there, female and male, all over the country, all over the world, that are sharing things that inspire me. And when I first started Twitter, it was completely because of Joey Fife, the physical educator up in Canada. He came to River Falls. It was the first ever professional development opportunity I've ever done. And the only reason I knew about it is I was in some meeting and somebody's said, yeah, your professional development request got approved. And I was like, what is that? Because nobody ever told me. And they're like, oh, if you ever want to go to a conference, you just, you got to fill out this application and usually, you financially get approved and you don't have to spend any money to go. And I'm like, what? Sign me up. So I went to this one in River Falls, and by my luck, Joey Fife was there. And I think that was when he was kind of going over the country, like saying, hey, Twitter is a hot opportunity for you to grow as a physical educator and for us to support each other and for us to share best practices and resources. And he first started talking about it, and I started a Twitter handle, and I was like, okay, cool. And before I knew it, I was following the Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Twins and, some news or whatever else. I wasn't actually using it for PE. And at some point, I don't know, I think it was when I started teaching at Site 2. And I was like, you know what? I feel like I'm on an island. I'm alone over here. I love it. But also I would love to be able to have conversations with other people about my ideas or my failures as a teacher and how I can get better. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. I created a new handle. It was pretty generic, at Mr. Spring PE, pretty boring. That's kind of how I am anyway. But ever since then, I've just been absolutely floored at how much I've learned and how many ideas I've created on my own that were, forwarded to me from other people. And, all of us that start this Twitter thing, we're a little nervous about sharing things to the world that is giving them to us, because you're putting yourself out there. Just like you talk about, like in distance learning, we were in a glass house or a glass gym from home, right? Mm-hmm. But when I started to share things, I'm like, there's no way anybody's going to like this or get anything out of it. And then, a couple people like some stuff. And eventually I was just like, you know what? I'm in kind of a unique world teaching only kindergarten PE. There might be somebody out there just like me on Twitter that could take an activity and run with it and grow with it and get better because of it. And that's when I started to really get addicted to it. And it wasn't I wasn't addicted to the likes or the retweets or the followers or any of that. I was addicted at the fact that something I might say or something I might share might actually help Jamie help 500 students. It might help Stacy build a program that he never thought he could build and be proud of that. And that's the platform, that's Twitter. And, a lot of people follow a lot of people. I don't follow a ton of people because I can't be on my phone as much as I want to be. And if I followed everybody that I love and respect in regards to physical education and health education and whatever it is, I'd be on my phone till 1 or 2 in the morning scrolling through high quality stuff, right? But the people that I follow are the people that are in my same situation, or they're Minnesota or Wisconsin or Midwest PE teachers that I highly respect. And they're people that I know, like, when they post something, I'm going to take something from it. I'm going to run with it. Right. But when you're on Twitter, and I know you talked about this with, I think, Mike, you kind of get the best versions of yourself, right? You're not going to show a kid, like I talked about earlier.
You're not going to show your funniest moment from teaching.
Or you're not going to show a kid falling down and getting hurt in your classroom because you structured things poorly. You're going to show the best of the best, because that's how we're built, right? We want to be proud of everything we put out there. But like you said, when you're doing distance teaching, guess who gets to see it? Not just the kids, your parents, the communities outside your walls, administrators, high-level people in your district. Because, if you're like me and you're sharing things via YouTube or Seesaw, like, they all have access to that. And, because I work on a team that is just super passionate and reflective and purposeful, I was pumped. I'm like, I dare anybody out there to look at what we do and try to judge us for being paid for being PE teachers from a distance. I dare anybody to say, hey, you didn't spend a lot of time over this distance period. You just plopped out links. And but that's me, right? That's our environment, and that's the team I worked on. And to answer your question, Jamie, like, yeah, there's probably tons of, I had friends in neighboring communities. They asked me, like, how's distance teaching going? And I'd be like, oh, it's so fun. Like, we're doing all these fun things and we're getting engagement from kids. And then I would ask back and they would say, oh, we just got a sheet of paper that told us to, like, do exercises and stuff. And, that bums me out. That makes me not feel as proud of what I do because other people are experiencing it a different way. But, I have a lot of conversations with my awesome wife about things like this. And she always reminds me, she's like, Randy, there are poor math teachers out there. There's poor history teachers out there. They're in a glass gym, glass house, glass class too. And, if you truly believe in what you do and what you teach, you should use those experiences as fuel, right? And to make sure that everybody within your network, within your circle, within your world of teaching knows that this is quality physical education. You love your job, and I can see why you love your job because you do it well. But like you said, Jamie, like, there's a lot of people out there that made us look like a bunch of people that roll out a ball or a gym teacher. And hopefully people didn't see too much of that and they saw more of what we're doing and what you guys are doing. But again, like, we have to hopefully use those opportunities and push forward. And shoot, like, right now there's districts across the country that are making cuts now as we speak.
Yeah.
But the powerful thing is, like you just talked about, sometimes it's good to be in a glass house. Like, think about Oregon. I think Portland was cutting a big school district of Portland was getting ready to cut DAPE and PE, and all these awesome teachers within the network of Twitter, they got on. I said, heck no, this is not going to happen. If it does, I'm going to be, busting down doors and walls, not letting it happen. And sure enough, like, enough voices were heard, enough quality PE teachers that were passionate about what they do came together, and those people listened, and they turned the corner for them. And those are the things that get me excited about being the teacher I am and the future of PE. And, to answer your question really deep, I want to be one of those people that pushes it forward and says, hey, I am in glass house. Please come watch me. Please come down and watch my teach PE. You won't believe what we do in a matter of 30 minutes. Yeah. And then again, like, I put all of our lessons on my website, our at home PE with Liberty website, lessons, because I want everybody to know, like, this is what we taught. I'm not, ashamed of it. I'm proud of it. We're proud of it. And if we got to do it again, we're ready to go.
We got one more thought for you here. Since this is Thinking PE, that's kind of what I do. That's why we ended up naming the podcast what we do, because I'm thinking about this, and you're thinking about the state of PE, and with all this stuff going on in districts around the country, possibly dropping PE, I'm feeling, and I'd like to get your feedback on this. My feeling is SEL, socio-emotional learning, is a big thing that's coming up in education in general. And it feels like PE is in a prime spot to latch onto that and be leaders in that. And I think if we do that, I just feel like that, I don't know the best way to phrase it, but that will anchor ourselves as a profession in the world of education. And you just try to cut that out when that's on the uprise. I don't need to jabber more. You got any thoughts on that kind of concept?
Yeah, and you guys know this. That's what makes our job as awesome as it is. Who else in our profession of being an educator gets to fully teach the whole child, and teach it in a way that makes them so well-rounded. They're not better athletes. They're just better human beings that are hopefully going to live a more healthy lifestyle, and so will their children, right? Who else gets to, reach kids physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, like who gets to do that? We have the opportunity, and I don't know how often, you guys get to teach your students, but the fact that I get them 4 times a week, 30 minutes at a time, like, gosh, every single day I tell my younger teammate, like, we are so lucky. Our kids are so lucky to get this time with us because they need it. And it's easy for us as PE teachers to say that, we get to teach them in all these ways, but really do it. And just from our experience, since 3-4 years ago, I noticed a failure of mine. I was not reaching my kids socially and emotionally, and I knew it. And I knew it for a couple of years, but I told myself, we have to create this platform, this foundation of efficiency with the screen in our gym and the GIFs. And I told myself, like, once we get this built in, then we gotta reach the kids emotionally and socially and mentally more, because we're not doing it right now. And it seems silly and it seems super simple, but my wife and I came up with this idea to put a banner in our gym that simply says, I notice you, I care about you, I want you to succeed, love, your PE teacher. And I wanted that up in our gym because it wasn't just for the kids. It was a reminder to me, I need to be better, and I need to be more than somebody that just teaches skills really well, or teaches kids the importance of getting their heart rate up, or teaches kids how they can have fun with their bodies and other classmates in a certain space or with certain equipment. I can do this in a more deeper way. And when that sign got put up, it reminded me every single day, we have got to reach these kids in an SEL type way, like you said, Stacy. And the way that we did that, or started to do that, and I highly suggest this to anybody listening, you got to carve out time to do it. So when we start class, almost every single lesson, we don't have the kids go to a spot. We don't have the kids get in a line. We let the kids walk into the gym, look at the screen, and they get to play. They get to play with each other, and they get to pick who they get to play with. And my favorite part of class every day is that first 5 minutes, because right then and there, I get to see who notices other kids that don't have a partner. Who goes with different kids every day to make new friends and show them, hey, let's have some fun together. And unfortunately, there's a lot of opportunities where kids don't get picked and they stand there so sad. But guess what? We, my team, we don't help those kids. We let them stand there because we make our kids notice those kids. And we also make those kids that don't have a partner, we don't make them, we teach them how to do this. We teach them how, hey, I don't have somebody to play with. What can I do? I raise my hand and I literally walk around with my hand raised. And at first, kids are really ashamed of this. But after a month or two of us teaching kids the importance of noticing these kids with their hands raised and running across the gym to ask them to play with them, So many kids raise their hand because they want that feeling. They want somebody to run at them from a distance and say, hey, can you play with me? Can you be in my group? I noticed you didn't have somebody. So that's literally telling kids and teaching them how to walk into a room and take a piece of equipment and play with somebody else.
Yeah.
And the transformations and the confidence that we see within our kids in that first 5 minutes is amazing. Now, this other idea that I highly suggest the world of PE, or whoever listens to you guys, which they should, is the last 5 minutes. And it's not drinking water. So Craig Hawkinson at Wyzetta School District, he's at Plymouth Creek PE. He's phenomenal. I met him at a professional development conference. He walked right up to me. We had great conversation. Our ideas were very similar. But anyway, he asked me, he's like, hey man, can me and my teaching teammate, Allison, come and watch you guys teach? And at first I was like, why would you want to do that? Like, I could just tell you what we do. But for some reason, he thought like, there's probably something different you guys do that I'm not seeing via Twitter, right? So he came and it was awesome. We didn't change anything. We didn't do anything different because everything we do, we're proud of, right? And he left and he's like, man, and Allison too, Allie, and they were so grateful and they had so many takeaways. But what's great about that, we had a bunch of conversations while we were teaching, and it was telling our kids like, hey, look at these other teachers who are trying to learn from other teachers. And they were so proud to showcase themselves doing well in our classroom. But anyway, to get back to this final 5 minutes, right? I asked Craig, I said, Craig, man, like I'm on spring break. Can I come watch you guys? And I went there and so many things blew my mind, but the final 5 minutes of the first class, the music stopped and literally all the kids picked up the equipment and they sat down in this little circle and a bunch of kids just started throwing their hands up. And I was like, what is going down right now? And then Craig or Mr. Hawkinson just called on the kids, and all they did for the next 3 or 4 minutes was compliment other students. They were pointing out things that they saw their classmates and their peers do that they thought was either awesome or positively impacted their time in PE that day. And I wrote that down right away. I was like, dude, like you guys are amazing, but I'm telling you right now, I'm going to steal this. And now what we do, we call that last 5 minutes, it's PowerPoint time. So we ask, hey, who's got a PowerPoint? And kids throw their hands up and they get to powerfully point at another student and tell them what they did to positively impact their day or what they did that they might not have noticed themselves doing that helped them get better at PE that day. And I got to tell you guys, like it transforms your teaching. And when you talk about social and emotional learning, Stacy, like that's it right there. And when you see kids get all flush in the face because they're so like proud but a little embarrassed that somebody's acknowledging something amazing they did in front of everybody else, it makes your day. It gives you goosebumps. Our 4th grade this last year, before we started distance learning, it killed us to have to let the kids go with their hands raised wanting to do PowerPoints. But you know what we did? We said, hey, I dare you to tell that person face to face right now as you walk out our door. And it just made it made kids almost cry sometimes. It was so cool. And I'm so grateful that Craig not only came to our school, because then it allowed us to come to his school so I could learn that for him. But again, that doesn't happen, Jamie, if we don't have a glass house, right?
Yeah.
And you know, if you're willing to put yourself out there and be proud of the PE you teach, man, like other people are going to get better because of it. And we need more female and male PE teachers across the country and the world to do that.
Well, I greatly appreciate that. I've got my notebook because I jotted that down. So
yeah,
that's the one great thing doing these interviews and these podcasts is we get so many ideas and things to take to our classrooms. And I want to take, before we wrap up here, I want to take that moment because you've got almost 6,000 followers on Twitter and very active on YouTube. I mean, many of us have used your videos on our distance learning experiences. So if you want to take some time to share some of your resources and ideas from Mr. Spring PE.
Sure. I mean, anybody that follows me, I'm so grateful for that. And more of just like humbled, like the fact that anybody, likes and takes things away from what I do is amazing. And honestly, we kind of got to this point where I had all these followers because I was sharing a lot of resources, which was great because there's a lot of things that people aren't sure how to create and they can easily use it on their projectors, right? But lately I've just been trying to show more of our practice. And because I'm really proud of it, and I'm proud of how active our kids are in our class period every single day. And we don't always do super fancy things, but when kids leave our gymnasium, they learned a lot, they did a lot, and they interacted a lot with each other. And I've been really proud to have people continue to follow us because we simply show what we're doing in our class. And I'm really excited. I was super pumped to launch this new project this school year. I'm calling it Project Peaks, and it's Peaks, and there's many plays on that word. But you talk about a glass house, Jamie. Basically, I wanted to find a platform or an avenue to literally open up the door to our classroom, and not just for the good parts, the highlights, but literally from start to finish, from 0 to 30 minutes. This is what we do, and we're not afraid to show any of it. And I think when you watch, to get back to when Craig visited us, when you watch other people teach in person, you truly see the passion and the philosophies behind what they do, how they do it, and why they do it. And I want to tell everybody out there, thank you for following me, but please follow the people that are willing to put themselves out there and show the ways that they're practicing PE that is in a high quality way. If you want, you can go to my website, which is, I don't promote it too often, but mrspringpe.weebly.com. I got tons of free resources on there. I got all of our at-home PE with Liberty distance learning lessons too on there if you want to go there and get some great ideas. I do teacher pay teachers. And, if I can just say for a couple minutes, the reason that I do that is twofold. I take 25% of that and I give it to a church of my choice because I believe that, God's given me the ability to do things in a special way with kids, and I want to give back. But then also my Google Drive's getting overloaded, and I use some of that money to give myself a platform to build and create things to share. So if you want to go out there, teacher pay teachers, Proud PE with Randy Spring. And this one, if maybe for you guys too. So I'm on the board of directors for this nonprofit called Phys Ed Connections. And anybody out there, if you take anything from this, go to phys-ed-connections.com. It's a professional development conference for PE and health teachers and coaches. It's in Stillwater, Minnesota. Unfortunately, we had to cancel it this year, but it's always the first week in August, and it is phenomenal. And there's great things on the website, and we're super pumped for the future of this conference, and especially in Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wisconsin, Iowa, Illinois. It's been amazing. These guys that I work with, Daryl Salmi and Mike Mooster. Mike Mooster is actually my father-in-law. He's a PE teacher too. But they started this Stillwater PE Institute 4 or 5 years ago, and now it's built into just this great supported from Stillwater School District professional development opportunity that's right in the backyards of Minnesota and the Midwest. So phys-ed-connections.com, and that's it. If anybody wants to ever email me, rlspring3@gmail.com. I'm here to help the world grow, and I'll tell you right now, I don't always do things the right way. And my way is not always the way, the truth, and the light, but I enjoy doing it, and I will hopefully be as passionate as I was when I started at that Site 2 building when I'm 35 to 40 years into this thing.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I think you will be. You seem to have that drive and that fire. So
we want to thank you for your time. It's been absolutely amazing. Great. Just inspiring to talk to. So we appreciate everything you do for the Phi Ed community.
Jamie, that whole Twitter is just an amazing resource. I love what he said. It's, it's just free. It's professional development. It's free. It's there when you need it. It's on demand. And he just dove all in. I love how he said he started. Well, I just gonna change the name and went for it. And man, he's got thousands of followers now.
Yeah, close to 6,000. Close to
Wow.
6,000 followers here. And it is that community and that connections and collaboration that you can have on Twitter, where we're going to be looking for new ideas, and what better place to find them.
Yeah. And just for people that are listening, at Mr. Spring PE is where you can find him. Otherwise, you can do a search within Twitter, and he'll come up pretty quick. So I would really encourage people, look for what he's got. And once you start following him, you'll see he's connected to other people that have great ideas. And that's the beauty of it. The PE community supports each other through that Twitter and other Facebook and other resources like that.
Well, yeah, and that's how we first learned about him was just looking for stuff in our regular classes long before COVID, just looking for new ideas and new things. And then when distance learning became a reality, that was one of the first places I went.
Yeah. And you know what, a different take on this, I would like to encourage people to be brave like he did and jump in. Just throw your stuff out there. I know I held back for years because I'm thinking, who cares about me? Who would ever want to know what I do in my classroom? And that's kind of, he overcame that, and he just started throwing things out there, found out, well, there are people that really would like to see what you're doing. And I would encourage other people to do the same thing. You might not be in Randy Spring. You might not ever have 6,000 followers. Most people don't. But I got a feeling you're going to help some people out. And I love his comment about, I might help Jamie help 500 kids just because I put a video out. Well, isn't that worth it? I don't know. I just want to encourage more people to be brave, if you want to call it that. I don't know. It's not even all that brave, but
and one way he's helped, you talk about helping impact kids. Well, he's going to help impact some of my students too, is implementing that social emotional learning.
Ooh.
And I really pulled some, just in our interview, it really made me think and pulled some good ideas out of things I'd like to try. Yeah.
The one thing that really kind of made me uneasy when he was talking about it, to be honest with you, at the beginning was, I just have kids raise their hand if they don't have a partner. I'm thinking,
who doesn't have a partner?
I'm the loser over here. In case you didn't notice me, the losers are over here. That was my first thought. But and I guess it is an important point to make, that he wouldn't do that without the training he does for the rest of the class, because that is the recipe for disaster there. But with the training and the specific focus on that, and I'm guessing there's some just really heart-to-heart discussions with the whole class to saying, hey, this is what we want our class to be like. This is how we help others. And then, hey, kids, watch and reflect on your own feelings when you go and help a kid out that doesn't have a partner. It feels good to you.
Yeah.
And that's why he's got kids running over there, because they feel so good. It's not to help this poor kid out. It's they feel good too by helping others. And that's a piece. And then the other piece that I really gained from that is I love that self-advocation of what am I doing if I don't have a partner? I can advocate for myself. I can raise my hand.
Mm-hmm.
I can go ask somebody. Or if I raise my hand, somebody can ask me. And wow, there's that self-esteem boost. I just love that concept.
And it's giving kids those tools, because too often we're there to quote unquote solve the kids' problems, instead of teaching the kids the tools to help them advocate for themselves.
Oh, that's a great point, Jamie. I love that you said that and made that point for sure.
One thing that he brought up that I really want to try is that last 5 minutes of class, and he called it that PowerPoint. But what a powerful thing to recognize the achievements of others, and I'm sure he's got something set up so that all kids can be engaged in that throughout the course of the year. You went to we team teach classes. We have 60 kids in the gym, so we're not going to be able to do 60 different PowerPoints, but create that opportunity for peer recognition.
Yeah, and you and I, that drew us a conversation out of us after we got done with the interview, and we both want to implement it, and it doesn't have to be exactly like he did it. We don't have to get in a circle, but the concept of having kids point out, some people take 5 minutes. Maybe you don't have time at the end. You take, how long would it take to have 3 PowerPoints where 3 kids say something? You kind of pointed that out to me, Stace. You can keep doing your normal end routine, but just throw that in there. How much it takes 15 extra seconds. And now you've added this piece without having to reshuffle your whole, I haven't had an end of the class routine like you do. I don't need to change it completely, but to add this piece in, what a boost. I was just really inspired by that.
And that's what thinking PE is. And it's what Randy Spring is really great at is how he took something he's already doing and implemented it in distance learning. And same thing now with the social emotional is how can we take something that we do, our end of class procedures, and just add to that? You don't have to revamp and totally change everything to make it overwhelming, but how do you take something you're already doing? And that's what thinking PE is thinking deeper into those things.
Yeah, and he does a fabulous job of that. And that gives him the confidence. And when he talked about that glass house, he says, I dare anybody to come in here. And, he's like, come on in, I'll glass all around. I got nothing to hide. We're doing a great job here. Well, that's because he's always thinking about to improve and what do I need to do better. And if he sees who was the guy he gave credit to for that end of the year, Craig Hawkins. He sees Craig Hawkins doing something that he should do. Well, he adds it because he's constantly thinking about it that way. It's pretty incredible, and that gives him the confidence that he knows he's doing a great job. And bring anybody in there and they'll decide. Yep. I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish.
I was going to say and reflective how he recognizes things where he can improve, or things that he can make better, or just something new, but just so reflective in his practice.
Yeah. You know what, to summarize this whole interview with Randy Spring, it just feels like he's always thinking.
He's always thinking about his thinking. And that's metacognition. And metacognition is the hallmark of quality teaching.
And that is thinking PE.
Connect with us on Facebook and Twitter at Thinking PE. Find us on all your favorite podcast providers by searching Thinking PE. For more resources and videos, go to www.thinkingpe.com. Thanks for listening.